Hey, glad you're here. Let me ask you something. Have you felt that shift in the air lately? This growing tension about Russia, war, and the future of peace in Europe? It's not just headlines anymore. From real military drills on the edge of NATO territory to cold statements coming out of Washington, it's starting to feel a little too real. And one thing that's catching a lot of people off guard is the change in the relationship between President Trump and Vladimir Putin. What used to be one of the more stable and even controversial parts of international politics is now turning unpredictable. There's frustration, confusion, and a real question of where this is all headed. So today we're breaking this down, not from a political angle, but from a perspective that helps us all better understand the moment we're living in and what it might mean down the line. Before we keep going, I'd love to know how you feel about all this. Have you noticed a shift? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts or concerns. And if you find this kind of calm, thoughtful content helpful, feel free to subscribe for more like it. So let's talk about what's really going on. Not long ago, President Trump often spoke of Putin in favorable terms. It was one of those strange constants in a world full of sharp divisions. People debated it, questioned it, even protested it, but it was steady. But now that tone is changing. And if you've been following recent events, you'll know why. You see, Trump has recently made comments that are surprisingly blunt, even for him. He said things like, Putin has gone absolutely crazy, and he's questioned what happened to him. Now, if we put that in context with what's happening on the ground in Ukraine, massive drone strikes, civilian deaths, a complete disregard for ceasefires, it's not hard to see what's fueling this frustration. But what's interesting here is how Trump is still trying to walk a very thin line. On one hand, he's clearly disillusioned with Putin. But on the other hand, he's also taken jabs at Ukrainian President Zelensky, calling him a source of constant problems. So, you might be wondering, what does that mean? Is Trump siding with either of them? Or is he trying to find a way to stand apart from both? Well, that's where things get complicated. Also, this shift in tone isn't just a political spat. It's happening while NATO is making real, physical moves. US troops have been staging in places like Gotland, a small island in Sweden that's suddenly become a symbol of strategic defense. That might sound far away, but what it signals is a lot closer to home. Gotland is now packed with radar stations, rocket launchers, and US and allied forces practicing what could only be called war scenarios. So, this is no longer just about politics. It's about positioning. And next, you have Sweden and Finland joining NATO. That tightens the alliance's presence right up against Russia's northern military assets. It means there's less of a buffer zone and more of a direct face-off. Think about that for a second. For decades, parts of Europe were intentionally kept neutral to avoid this kind of tension. That's no longer the case. So then, where does President Trump stand on all this? That's what's unclear. He's expressed concerns about NATO before, calling it outdated, questioning why the US should carry so much of the cost, even floating the idea of leaving it altogether during past speeches. And yet, while his political statements send mixed signals, the military presence under his administration hasn't exactly pulled back. In fact, in places like Europe's north, it's increased. This dual message of frustration with NATO and yet continued reinforcement has left a lot of allies feeling unsure. Is the US still fully committed to protecting NATO members under Article 5, the mutual defense agreement that basically says an attack on one is an attack on all? That question is not small. It's the core of NATO's entire existence. Also, let's talk sanctions. Trump has said he's considering harsher economic pressure on Russia, maybe even a new round of sanctions if Putin continues these large-scale attacks. And while Congress is pushing for more aggressive action, including hitting Russia's oil and gas exports, the administration seems to be holding its cards close. The message is, we're keeping all options on the table, which on the surface sounds smart, but it also adds to the uncertainty. Now, if you're wondering why this matters to the average person, to you and me, well, it's not just about faraway countries or foreign leaders. Global tension like this can trickle down in a lot of ways. Fuel prices, food imports, cybersecurity threats, even the safety of Americans abroad. Those are all things that become more fragile when global alliances begin to shift. Besides, we can't ignore the economic side either. NATO, beyond being a defense pact, is also tied to our economy. Trade with European allies supports millions of US jobs. So when people question our participation in NATO, it's not just a military concern, it could hit wallets and livelihoods too. You see, the world we're in today isn't the same as the Cold War era where everything was binary. Now, there are more players at the table. China, India, and other nations have their own influence over what happens in the Arctic and beyond. And Russia isn't just building tanks anymore. Their tactics include cyber attacks, propaganda, economic pressure, and covert sabotage. It's not always about armies on borders. It's about chaos in communication, confusion in politics, and slow erosion of trust. Speaking of which, one of the things that's adding to the unease is this sense that traditional deterrence may not work anymore. NATO used to rely on a simple message: if you attack us, we hit back. But when the threats are cyber or economic, what does hitting back even look like? And here's another layer. Some sources say Trump might reduce US troop levels in Europe and pull back from leading NATO's command structure. That's a big deal, not just for defense planning, but for morale, for trust, for the whole idea that America will stand by its allies when things get tough. So then, what's the takeaway here? Well, we're watching something rare, a relationship between two world leaders that used to be surprisingly steady, starting to fall apart in real time. And that change is happening while the geopolitical map is being redrawn. Old assumptions are breaking down, and the fear is real. Not just fear of invasion, but fear of missteps, miscalculations, and missed signals. I want you to think about this not just as something happening out there, but as something that affects the entire system we all live in. Whether it's your 401k shifting because of international tension, your local gas station changing prices due to sanctions, or even broader shifts in the way America shows up in the world, it all matters. Now, I know this can feel like a lot. So much of the conversation around Russia and NATO and global conflict can be overwhelming, and sometimes it feels like the average person has no say in any of it. But staying informed, asking good questions, seeking clarity, and paying attention to the signs is more powerful than it seems. If you're still here, I want to say thank you. I know this wasn't a short topic, but it's one that really does matter. And hopefully, by now, you have a clearer sense of what's changing, why it matters, and what to keep an eye on as things move forward. And let me know in the comments, do you feel like the US should be doing more in NATO or less? What worries you the most about this shift in global politics? Your perspective helps shape where we take this next. And if this kind of content helps bring clarity and calm to a complicated world, please consider subscribing. It's the best way to stay in the loop with balanced, thoughtful updates that are built around your concerns, not just the headlines. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.